Authorities are on the lookout for terror around the world tonight as we close in on the Christmas holiday. We've seen raids in Germany, Britain, and tonight, California, where the FBI says it found a martyrdom letter, several guns, and ammo in the home of a Modesto tow truck driver. Authorities say 26-year-old Everitt Aaron Jameson may have been planning a Christmas attack on the popular San Francisco tourist destination Pier 39. A bureau agent says Jameson espoused radical jihadi beliefs to an undercover agent, including, quote, loving an online post that showed Santa Claus threatening to attack New York City with a box of dynamite. Jameson, who once served in the Marines, reportedly told the agent he did not need an escape plan because he was ready to die. Jameson's father, a devout Christian, just told reporters he talked with his son about his Muslim faith, but did not see this coming.
It's not him. This is not the way he was raised. This is not, you know what I mean? This is not him. He don't hurt people. He's not the type of person that hurt people. You know what I mean? He loves animals. He loves you know what I mean? He loves everything. He doesn't like when people cry. You know, my daughter's more tougher than he is, you know? You know, he's more the softer, you know what I mean? He sees someone crying, he's like crying too, you know? And I don't know what they did. I don't know if, you know what I mean? If they talked him into it, or they just, you know what I mean?
Who's they? Who are you referring to?
I don't know, the Jihad or whoever, you know what I mean? I don't know if he really understood what he was doing.
Meanwhile, in Chesterfield, England, a bomb squad detonating a suspicious device, and across Germany there have been raids. A 29-year-old allegedly with connections to ISIS, arrested and accused of planning to blow up a famous ice skating rink, very popular during the holidays. And of course, Australian police say terrorism could have been the motive behind that car-ramming attack yesterday in Melbourne that injured 19. Let's bring in former CIA analyst Buck Sexton to talk more about this. Buck, no surprise, welcome to the show, that this would be happening around the holiday season. ISIS has been provoking it and asking for it for months.
Well, Shannon, these kinds of plots that have been disrupted are exactly what the Islamic State has been telling its adherents to plan and to execute. And so it's not surprising at all, given the very specific instructions that we've seen from ISIS propaganda channels, putting up posters, lionizing lone wolves, telling them to attack specifically on or around the Christmas holiday, on or around New Year's Eve, and using vehicles and acting on their own. So this increase in chatter, while it's important not to overstate, because a lot of the time it is just bravado from these jihadists online, does reach people who have radicalized and can push them to an attack. And it seems, certainly in the case of this averted incident in San Francisco, that's what happened.
Yeah, it's interesting because this is a young man who used to be a Marine. He was qualified and awarded as a sharpshooter. He was discharged at some point over, it sounds like, a medical issue. But I've read the complaint. It's very extensive in what the undercover informant or agent told authorities in this complaint about what he said. They said they found a letter when they ultimately did raid his place. It said, in part, quote, "We have penetrated and infiltrated your disgusting country. These acts will continue until the lions of Islam overtake you." You heard the soundbite from his father. He sounded baffled. He couldn't square this with the young man that he knows. How could he be so far down the path that he was plotting, allegedly, a murderous attack, and his family not even know?
Well, Shannon, it's not uncommon that in incidents like this, radicalization occurs without family members or friends necessarily knowing it, and certainly not having an understanding of the extent. And that he had a letter in his home is, in fact, part of what the Islamic State puts out there. They have a playbook now that is online so that there's no confusion whatsoever, so that when an attack like this occurs, the media can't say that it's a hate crime or can't say that the person was having some kind of a mental breakdown. They want them to bring a letter, and that's why the attack here in New York City on Halloween, the individual couldn't have made it any more clear it was part of the Islamic State's global war for a future caliphate. And so in this instant, the radicalization happened. He went to jihadization, and the FBI, this is a textbook operation. They deserve a lot of credit for it. They stopped this before it could cause casualties.
Yeah, and it literally just came down to the last couple of days. I mean, the complaint details conversations that have happened this week, within the last couple of days before they went in for this raid. Here are some of the things that ISIS is suggesting this holiday season: burning down churches, targeting markets and places where a lot of people will be, hitting important factories that it would impact commerce, and even giving instructions for using Christmas lights to trigger explosions. Now, with all of that in mind, we had this car ramming incident in Australia yesterday. We were told initially this was a disturbed individual. This wasn't necessarily about terrorism. How do you think that case is ultimately going to pan out? There's still many questions.
Well, when one looks at the probability of having an Afghan immigrant in Australia who also says to police that he ran over a bunch of people with his car in one of the busiest parts of Melbourne right before the Christmas holiday, and did so because of the treatment of Muslims around the world, that's where we are right now on the facts, and that the authorities in Melbourne and in Australia are still saying that it looks like they can't come up with a link to terrorism. It seems like they're moving rather slowly on that motive. I think the political motive and therefore the terrorist nature of the act is pretty clear at this point, or at least there's a few more bits that could be added into it, but it's certainly not random. They said it was an act of evil from the beginning. It wasn't an accident, and so why would somebody do that? And in Australia, we see what we've also experienced in this country, which is a desire, because of political correctness, to, at least in the initial hours and even days of an attack like this, downplay it. And I think that the press and even government sometimes think that that does a favor for people because it makes them less concerned somehow, and they feel like the authorities are on the threat. I think that's really bad news, Shannon, because the truth is, everyday citizens who are vigilant and keeping their head on a swivel can play a very important role in averting these kinds of attacks. We saw that with the Times Square bomber back in 2010, Faisal Shahzad. It was civilians who tackled the underwear bomber on Christmas Day in a plane above Detroit. He could have taken down that whole plane if things had gone differently. So people, everyday folks, do have a role in this, and I don't think it's the place of the media or, quite honestly, of the authorities anywhere, Australia or elsewhere, to try and downplay the obvious motivations of some of these attacks.
Yeah, and they're very, very specific threats this holiday season, so up to all of us to keep an eye out and to not be afraid to speak out when necessary. Buck Sexton, great to see you. Merry Christmas in the meantime.
Good to see you. Merry Christmas, Shannon.